Okay, we'll start the meeting. It's 12 noon, Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Donna, David,
Here.
Scott,
Here.
Thomas,
Here.
Mark,
Here.
Jeff,
Here.
Bob,
Here. Okay, we have a full assembly today with member Newman zooming in. So it's now time for the voluntary pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item on today's agenda, approval of minutes from the December 19th assembly meeting. I'd entertain a motion to approve those unless there's any changes. So moved. Second. Motion's been made by member Michi, a second by member Kinsinger. All those in favor of approving those minutes as presented, say aye. 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 Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Brings us to item 4, amendment and approval of today's meeting agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve today's agenda as presented if there's no proposed changes. Member Marsh.
Yes, I would like to propose that we add to the discussion perhaps today to discuss the information that Josh Adams presented to us at our last meeting regarding the judgeship having been moved to Ketchikan, the information that he presented in the meeting, as well as the information with the court case, I think might be worth a discussion to see where it is.
Okay, so let's take that in the form of a motion. Is there a second? Second. Okay, discussion or we'll just, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will add that under discussion. Please remind me if I forget. Okay, so entertain a motion to approve today's meeting agenda as amended. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll move forward with the one amendment. Public hearings. Today we have a public hearing for ordinance 2022-16. This is an ordinance repealing chapters 4.26, 4.29, 4.31, and 4.32 of the former City of Petersburg Code and amending chapters 4.25 and 4.40 to account for borough formation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to participate in this public hearing, or is there anyone zooming in, Clerk Thompson?
There's not.
Okay, so seeing nobody in the audience interested, no one zooming in, that public hearing is closed. Bid awards today. We have a bid award for the Blind Slough Hydroelectric Upgrades Construction Contract Award. Utility Director Hagerman recommends award of the Blind Slough Hydroelectric Upgrades Construction Project to McGee Dawson Joint Venture for a contract price not to exceed $5,744,000. I'd entertain a motion to approve that bid award.
So move. Second.
Motion's been made by member Lynn, seconded by member Mucci to approve this. Any discussion on this bid award? Member Lynn.
Yes, thank you. I've got a couple of questions for Carl here. In reading the document, I see in the end, during the commissioning, when we set out the specs for this, in the specs, did we set forth what we were looking for outputs from that hydro after we reinstalled and put everything back in place?
Yeah, yes, a nominal value of KW output. Yes.
And that's what we'll be looking at when we commission it to accept the final payment.
Well, so that is actually determined by the equipment that we're purchasing through the contract with Jilks Hydro. That equipment as installed, this contract is for installation of the equipment that we're buying from Jilks. And so that the equipment, the turbine and the generator being purchased through that equipment procurement contract, that is subject to the rated output. The Jilks needs to verify with the borough that the equipment that that we're having installed will meet our target as far as KW output.
And that leads me to my second question is, when we approved the contract for the engineering firm, we also included, wasn't it, contract inspection in that? Is that not right?
That is correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other discussion on this bid award? See no more interest in discussion. We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
Mark,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes. Okay, we will award that bid to McGee Dawson Joint Venture for our hydroelectric project. Item 7, persons to be heard related to items on today's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to items related to today's agenda? And once again, Clerk Thompson, there's no one online.
there is not.
Okay. So seeing no interest in that, we will move on to persons to be heard unrelated to items on today's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on items unrelated to today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on the agenda to item 9, boards, commission, and committee reports. There are none. No items under consent agenda. Item 11, report of other officers, Petersburg Medical Center update. PMC CEO Hofstetter will provide an update on activities at the medical center.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year.
Good to hear.
A couple items related to the operations. We've been extremely busy the last couple of weeks in our inpatient ER. Our census is almost full. It's been very challenging transferring patients out into higher acuity if they needed beds in Anchorage, in Seattle, and many different areas. Tertiary care facilities have been very hard to come by. So it's had an impact in our facility. A lot of respiratory illnesses going on out there. So something to be vigilant of. We're having our board meeting this January at the end of the month, and we'll be going into our mid-year budget review. Finances have been extremely challenging in the last year. A lot of expenses skyrocketed. We've seen that quite a bit in our healthcare facilities. So there'll be some trickle down effect with that and with our operations. Home health program, a couple of updates there. They've been expanding some of the services. They've been working with school and nursing services. They've also applied and received the waiver services for SDS for the Medicaid program, which allows us to do care coordination. They also are able to look at things like adult daycare and respite services, which we're working closely with them, which is actually great. And then lastly, from the new facility standpoint, we put an RFP out for the general contractor, and we're working towards meeting some of the deadlines for the architect on the design, space planning, and we're able to get the utility and sewer water reports up from that. So we'll have a little bit more to compile here in the next few weeks on that. That's my update.
Any questions of Mr. Hofstetter today? Member Marsh.
Thank you. Would it be possible to get a written report of what you present so we can digest it a little more completely?
Sure.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Member Kinsinger.
Yes, I don't know whether I missed it or not, but have we gotten any closer to figuring out where we actually want to place the hospital at?
Yeah, as part of the reports on the water utility and the sewer water and the utility reports, as well as the design, they're looking at the existing lot, and they'll be making some recommendations to the hospital board and then to the assembly on those locations. So it's a step process. We have to look at what the footprint's going to look like with our operations. We have to look at the architects have to look at the space. They have to look at the site, and then they have to look at the cost related to utilities and sewer expansion.
And are we still looking at the two sites up by?
Yeah.
That we were before?
That's
so
correct.
It's still somewhere in that area
Yeah.
out there. Okay.
Yeah. And once we come closer to that, then it goes to planning and zoning through the Borough Assembly process.
Any other questions of Mr. Hofstetter? Thanks for your report today. Okay, that brings us to the mayor's report. There is no written mayor's report at the time of putting the meeting together, but I'd just like to remind everybody that this Friday by 5 p.m., the clerk is requesting that we have our manager performance evaluation forms to her. And then we will move forward from there. We have selected Member Fine Walsh to work with me to have a conference with the manager, and that will be, what date? Did we pick a date for that? Debbie, I don't see any.
You haven't picked a date yet. It'll be sometime between the 16th and 27th.
Work on that after we compile all the information. Okay, so
Yes.
just a reminder to get that information to the clerk by this Friday. And I'd like to give a big thank you to Trey Ackerson for his years of service to SEPA. I had the opportunity to work with Trey on a few things, and you're very capable person. So, and that's it for the mayor's report. Now we're on to the manager's report.
Thank you, sir. The South Harbor dredge was on holiday break from December 17th to January 3rd. Prior to the break, Western was able to take roughly a dozen barge loads out and dump in the disposal area. Digging is hard. They're making headway as they work from the outer area towards the beach. Each dump barge load is roughly 500 cubic yards when full. Through Christmas, the harbor crew took turns providing extra watch due to the warming temperatures and caught nearly catastrophic events for 4 vessels. Through hull fitting failures, cracked pumps, and water tank plumbing breaks, we had pumps on scene and heat guns ready to gain to open up access hatches as needed. Also made sure to clear floats of snow before the rain came, so the floats were left in good shape prior to taking the holiday time off. Reminder for boat owners to remove the clutter and to make way for winter snow removal on the floats. Extension cords should be tucked tight against the bull rail or risk getting caught up by snow removal equipment. Also, boat owners should call the harbor office with boat watching information as vessel owners start to travel out of town. We're taking an inventory of broken washers and dryers in assisted living. These will be replaced as needed. And Derek has set up meetings with the Medicaid folks to go over current and the new rules. Water Department has received word that as part of the omnibus spending bill recently approved by the federal government, it did contain some funding for the replacement of the Water Department's clear well, thanks to Senator Murkowski. This will enable the department to develop the project to replace the current open top clear well, which provides filtered blackwash water storage. Department will need to chip in another 20% to accomplish the work, but this will be sorted out in the FY24 budget process. I think the dollar amount was about 1.6 million, Carl. Yeah. Check your water meters. We're in good shape now, but freezing conditions will break the frost bases on the meter and stop water from entering a home. If you have a water meter that is leaking water, you can either call Public Works Office or the water plant to have the borough replace the frost base. HDR Engineering has produced the first draft of the ADEC forms required to apply for water quality certification for our wastewater treatment plant discharge. We've issued some corrections and edits, but this effort will be wrapped up soon in the state's hand for review. During the recent cold snap, all SEPA community members had to supplement hydropower with diesel power during the system peaks. Petersburg and Wrangell took 2-day shifts watching the loads and adding diesel as needed. Ketchikan also had to supplement the system with diesel power. All went well and all lights stayed on during the time of incredible stress on the regional system. Structural and mechanical engineers will be visiting the community center on the 10th and the 11th of this month to investigate the sewer line repair project to create biddable documents. Architectural engineer conducted a site visit on Wednesday, the 21st. Light visors have been purchased from with State of Alaska grant funds for the overhead lights at the ice skate pond. They should arrive in February and will be installed shortly after. Parks and Rec would like to thank the Petersburg Volunteer Fire Department for assisting with the ice skate pond. Having it ready for skaters is greatly appreciated by the many community members that were enjoying the area. Co-ed youth volleyball registration is open at Parks and Recreation. The season starts January 9th. Please visit the Parks and Rec website or stop in at the front desk to register for the 3rd through the 5th and 6th through the 8th grade groups. Parks and Rec would like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Claus, the middle and high school volunteers, Wes Malcolm, Jay and Emmy Anderson, Hammer and Weekon Trading Union, OBI, and the Waterway Vet Clinic for all of their assistance with the wonderful Winter Wonderland event. As the weather warmed up after the recent cold snap, lots of water leaks were discovered as frozen water lines and meters thawed out. The streets crew has been pretty busy responding to these issues as they are reported. We're also having a lot of residents stopping by Public Works to get sand for driveways and sidewalks. Aaron is working on resurrecting the LEPC, the local planning agency. This meeting, the first meeting will be held at the Fire Hall on January 12th at 3 p.m. He's also received notice that the all hazard mitigation plan for the borough will expire on June 13th, 2023. This plan expires every 5 years, and there will be some items that the assembly will have to address, and Aaron will keep me informed and the assembly informed as we move forward with the process. As part of this, for renewing that plan, Aaron has also applied for a BRIC grant to offset the expense of renewing the plan. This is the same grant Sandy applied for in the 2018 when the all hazard mitigation plan was renewed last. As we hover between freezing and thawing temperatures, please keep an eye on your plumbing. And if you have them sprinkler systems, there's been a recent string of burst pipes that led to false alarms for the fire department. For those buildings that will not be occupied over the winter, Public Works have offered to close water supply to your buildings for free. We encourage folks to take advantage of this program. Our modified Firefighter 1 program begins January 7th. Contact the station for details. And for those living without an established address, the Volunteer Fire Department encourages residents to apply and register for an address to help direct our volunteers when responding. Having a precise location to respond to will help us help you faster. Community Development is happy to assist the public with this process, and the Volunteer Fire Department Associated is happy to provide address signs for $20. Our online ETT program is still ongoing. Deadline to sign up is February 1st, and the EMT1 bridge class will be starting in January. Contact the station for details. Got 2 new dispatchers who are currently in training and doing very well. And the s'mores with the cops had a great turnout. Pictures are available at the PD. And that's it, unless there's questions.
Any questions of the manager today? His report, Member Mucci.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the ETT program. Do we know how many people are enrolled in that class?
I do not. Aaron, do you know?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. We currently have 7 enrolled, and then about another 6 that are tentatively going to be in the EMT1 bridge from ETT.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the manager? Member Marsh.
Thank you. Would you explain the program that Aaron is working to, you say, resurrect LEPC?
The LEPC is our local planning group that's usually made up of folks like members from the Forest Service, the hospital, volunteer fire department, throughout the borough, police. And their job is to build up the plans and talk about disasters that could occur here in Petersburg and how would we respond for that. So it's basically a coordination effort so that we all talk to each other and have a good idea of what each other's capabilities are.
So this is local emergency planning commission?
Correct. They in turn provide information to the state when it comes to things where the state might basically have to be involved if we needed extra equipment or people or, so the LEPC is really important for making sure that the state knows what we're capable of. We know what we're capable of, and we know how to coordinate with all the people involved in it here locally.
Is this a requirement by the state, and is there funding associated with it? If we have it in place, do we get X number of dollars or percentage?
I don't know. It's a requirement if we want to apply for state grants on other things, like the all hazard mitigation plan is a requirement that we have. And one of those requirements is that you have a local group review it. I don't know if they specifically call out LEPC as compared to just local people have to be involved.
Other questions of the manager? I have a question about this.
Aaron had his hand up on probably.
Aaron, do you have a
LEPC.
response to
In addition to the help in the plan for emergencies, there is a federal, I forget the name of the piece of legislation. But it also, the LEPC handles the Community Right to Know Act, has to deal with hazardous materials in the town. And so we collect that information and disperse it upon request for, things like ammonia or any other hazard that could happen in town if those chemicals were to get loose. So.
Yeah, thank you. So this commission, this local emergency planning commission, has it been out of existence for a while? And
Well, when Sandy retired, we knew that she was the driving force behind keeping that operational to a certain extent. So when she retired, meetings weren't called and we did not have a real active group. They still discussed with each other via email, but we didn't have meetings. We weren't doing tabletop exercises, things that make that whole process. And Aaron's, since he's been on board, he's trying to get all this stuff reactivated to a certain extent. And so far, so good.
and then another question I have, it looks like on your report, the meeting plan for January 12th. Did I get the date right? Was that right, Mr. Hankins? So how do we form this commission? I mean, is there appointments by, I can't recall, it's just.
I'm trying to remember, do we even ask the assembly for permission?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Aaron. Aaron and I have been through this recently. Go ahead.
Okay.
So as part of getting this back on track, I looked into it. So both members of our local board need to be approved by the borough and then also by the state. And so every 3 years, the state has to reapprove those members to still be on that board. As part of talking with Debbie, it sounded like the borough only needed to give their blessing once. Is what we came up with combing through the requirements from the state and the local LEPC bylaws.
So basically what that means is when we have an empty seat for one reason or another on the committee, Aaron or we put out a letter of interest, someone puts in their name, the assembly approves the person for that seat. And then every 3 years thereafter, the state just has to reapprove that person in that seat until that person resigns from the seat, and then we would reappoint someone new.
Okay, so once we appoint an assembly member, for instance, then they're on there in
Until they resign from it.
perpetuity. Okay.
Yes.
Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I don't think we've met prior to during the pandemic, and during that time, I was liaison to the LEPC.
Right, I really, yeah. All right.
It's been a long time since we've.
And you're still listed as that, Jeff.
Thank you.
The last meeting was April 20th, 2020.
Yeah, I think the pandemic had a lot to do with that. Yeah.
Okay, I just kind of need a refresher on, so it sounds like the commission will be full unless there's vacancies, and we will.
There's a couple vacancies, and yes, we will be bringing them before you.
Okay, perfect. That's all I need to know. Okay, there's no other questions of the manager. That brings us to unfinished business. One item there today, and that's ordinance 2022-16. This is an ordinance repealing chapters 4.26, 4.29, 4.31, and 4.32 of the former City of Petersburg Code and amending chapters 4.25 and 4.40 to account for borough formation. This is the third and final reading, and we did have a public hearing on this today. So I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion's been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Fine Wolf. Discussion. Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Jeff,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes. Ordinance 2022-16 passes unanimously in its third and final reading. That brings us to new business. First item under that category is ordinance 2023-01. An ordinance amending Petersburg Municipal Code, sections 14.30.030 and 14.30.040 to increase certain service rates at the Mountain View Manor Assisted Living Facility. If adopted in 3 readings, this ordinance will link the basic care per day assisted living service rates for self-pay residents to the amounts permitted by the federal government for Medicaid residential supported living, and will increase the rate for basic cable TV at the facility to account for the increased cost of the service incurred by the borough. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its first reading.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Kinsinger. Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you. Just maybe a brief explanation for the folks at home of why we're raising rates.
Sure. The first thing is we didn't raise them during the pandemic. We kept them stable and we didn't. So for 2020 and 2021 and 2022, we did not raise the rates. So this will bring us up to where we should have been as Medicaid continues. No matter what happened with the pandemic, Medicaid kept raising their rates. So this will bring us back in line with Medicaid, and we'll back where we should be.
Thank you.
Any other questions or any discussion? Member Kinsinger.
Yeah, just informational. Are the majority of the people there self-pay residents, or the majority there on Medicaid, or are there any numbers
Majority of the folks there are on Medicaid.
on Medicaid?
Yeah.
Okay. And the Medicaid rates, like right now, the self-pay rate is lower than what the Medicaid rate, what we're allowed to charge.
Yeah.
Is there a substantial difference?
Well, let me give you the numbers. So rent's going from 1,400 or from 1,100 to 1,400. That's the rent. And then on the Medicaid side, you have, which is the service plans itself, they're going from 4,880 to 5,619. So,
And that's related to the level of care that the residents receive.
well, and that's just the basic number.
The basic.
Numbers go up from there,
Right,
but that's the Medicaid basic rate is what it amounts to. So Medicaid raises it every year, no matter what. And normally we follow that and we match the two. We cannot charge anybody more or less, well, than what we charge Medicaid is what it amounts to. So Medicaid doesn't want us to have people in there that where we're charging Medicaid more than what we are self-pay.
I
And
see.
so this gets it back to where there was before the pandemic. And you know, no one likes to see rate increases, but as we've all seen, costs go up, labor costs have gone up, equipment goes up, and you know, we're kind of out of the mix. Medicaid is paid by the federal government. And you know, we want to take advantage as much as we can to keep that facility, you know, open and functioning.
Maybe not exactly specific to this ordinance, but where are we in our process with our discussions with PMC taking over the facility?
We have a target date of July 1st of 2023. I don't know if we'll make that or not, but we continue to meet with Phil and his staff to talk about various aspects. The hospital's attorneys involved, the borough's attorneys involved, and we're going through contracts and I mean, everything from like, you know, how do you split up the cable bill between elderly housing and assisted living? A lot of those things were combined. So having to split those back out. And that's some of the stuff, something as similar or as simple as small tool inventory. You know, we've got tools and equipment that, where does that go? Should that go to, plan on going to the hospital? Should it go to the, you know, stay with the borough and for elderly housing? We've got vehicles. All of that's what we're going through right now.
So we're going to have a report by July 1st, or we're hoping to have it done by July 1st?
Hoping to have it done by July 1st.
Okay.
But I mean, we've got a ways before we're ready to, you know, sit in front of the assembly and say, okay, here's what this means. So.
Right. And then before that will actually happen, you'll come to us with what the proposal is from the hospital and we'll vote it up or down then.
And it has to be approved by the hospital board as well. So.
And could you keep us apprised of that process between now and July 1st? So
Yeah.
it doesn't hit us by surprise and we have an opportunity to evaluate all the ins and outs of it?
Yeah, I mean, the stuff we're working on right now, I mean, I didn't think the assembly would care who gets the assisted living bus versus not, or which hammer goes where. We're at the stage where the assembly, I think, has the most value is when we get into the actual, how this is gonna work. I mean, the hospital will take this, I mean, and we're not there yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, my concern is, as we go into the budget process, if we're going to retain ownership of Mountain View Manor, we have to incorporate that into our budget for next year. So ideally, it would be nice if it was.
It
done
would
by
be
July
very
1st.
nice. Jody and I, as well as Phil's group, would love this to happen by then. But it's, we're not going to do it wrong we're not going to rush and then do something wrong.
Okay.
Okay, back onto the topic at hand. Is there any other discussion on ordinance 2023-01? Clerk, please call, Member Marsh.
Yes, thank you. So we have, most of the residents are Medicaid, you say. Self-pay rates are somewhat higher, if I understood the report or the information there. At what point does it become too cost prohibitive for the self-payers to use that option?
I can't speak for people's
Sure,
individual
sure.
financials. So I mean,
But is that a consideration in the rate?
actually,
increases?
we're just tying it to Medicaid.
Okay,
So we're not trying to manage two different sets of rates. We're just basically saying, if Medicaid will approve this much, then that's what we're going to make our self-pay rates is Medicaid. There's some advantage of that. That means somebody has the option to go to Medicaid if they qualify and, can go down that route. And that's not going to be a big shock to their system. It's how we've always done it, so to speak.
Any other discussion on ordinance 2023-01? Clerk, please call the roll.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
yes,
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff, David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes. And the next reading of this will be in 2 weeks, the next meeting, and we'll have a public hearing. Next item under new business, ordinance 2023-02. This is an ordinance amending the official zoning map for Service Area 1 of the Petersburg Borough to rezone parcel B, block 302, Greenbelt subdivision located at 10 North 12th Street from open space recreation to commercial 1, C1. And this is the lot that has the sign on it as you turn into the Hammer and Weekon grocery store. Entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its first reading.
So move.
Is there a
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Lynn. Discussion. Member Lynn.
I have a couple questions for Liz on this. One of them has to do in the information that was provided. It talks in there, or I believe we have a water main that's on the street near that or across that lot. I'm not sure which it was. But if we transfer this, is there a need or are there provisions to make sure that that water main is protected at all times? Because I believe that's a major water main to the airport and so forth.
Through the mayor, Assemblymember Lynn, the water line runs along Hagen Drive, and there's already a 10-foot easement in place there to protect that water line. And then also, I think when if we get to the point where we're going to convey that parcel to a private entity, it would behoove the borough to put into the agreement that, that water line needs to be protected at all costs. But there is an easement in place to protect it already.
Okay. Another question for you. Also in there, the earlier planning commission had a comments about sight distance when you come out on the highway. But I noticed in this part, I didn't see the same concern, or maybe it wasn't, and maybe it's not an issue now. What changed, or what is it protected under the sight distance that you have on the highway?
Through the mayor, you're correct. The previous time that this was considered, the planning commission did raise that issue that they wanted to keep that line of sight open. That information was provided to the current planning commission. They didn't see it as a concern. Also, now there's that 10-foot easement as well. So you're kind of already building in some protection that wasn't in place before.
Thank you.
Other questions, member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you. Just for the folks at home, if we do transfer this property to, do we have an idea of what it will be used for the folks at home?
Well, I can't answer that question, but I didn't read the full, there's a little paragraph here that says the planning commission recommends to rezone this land from open space recreational to commercial one. The Petersburg Indian Association has filed an application to purchase the parcel if the rezone is approved by the assembly. So is that still in effect? That interest is still there? So reading that, I read it before the meeting, but so if we rezone this, Petersburg Indian Association is interested in purchasing this, does it have to go to bid?
Well, of course, that will be up to you. Yes, it will come before you and you will decide how that sale will take place. Yes.
Kinsinger?
Yes, I know. When I was on the planning commission, lot 1 and lot 2 are privately owned. And I believe they're currently zone C1, I believe, as well. So.
Correct.
So just for the folks at home, what we're talking about is a very narrow strip of land along the highway. Basically, it's not a whole lot more space than what the sign is going farther in. So it's not a very big lot. It's not even a half acre lot.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jeff, Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2023-02 passes unanimously. It brings us to communications. All the communications we've received recently are on this agenda or on the borough's website. So if anybody's interested in seeing communications we've received recently, that's where you can find them. Next item is assembly discussion items, and member Marsh asked to have a discussion on losing our local judge. So since you had to put on the agenda, member Marsh, we'll let you start.
Thank you. Yeah, in reading through this information, based on its history and its origins back in the early 80s, I was curious as to how it was determined, why it was determined that the judgeship should be moved from Petersburg, Wrangell, looping in Cape down to Ketchikan. And whereas it doesn't seem like it could affect court cases, I think perhaps that it could if you take away that local connection. So I'm wondering what the interest of the assembly is in pursuing this. Do we, would it be worth creating a resolution, or shall we dig some more information on the why that was determined back then? I know the evidence that was presented here seems pretty solid as for how it should be restored back to Petersburg and Wrangell. So that would be my interest in, do we want to restore that? And by creating a resolution that would say, yes, this is our input, but it might lend some credence to it.
Any other input on this discussion item? Member Fine Walsh?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just speaking to the disadvantages our community faces not having a judge on hand here constantly. I wouldn't go so far as to say it deprives people of their day in court, but there is a distinct advantage to having a human person in the room with you. I feel that typically justice is better served, when the judge can appraise the parties and not just listen to them over a speakerphone or a Zoom call. So it does make a substantial difference. Having looked at the pleadings provided by Mr. Adams, you know, I'm not convinced that you know, litigating against the state of Alaska is the best way to get a judgeship back to our community. But I also feel that, you know, his comment about there being a judicial desert between you know, Ketchikan and the communities in the north is not wrong. It really is, and it's not ideal for us. And I think, you know, perhaps a resolution reaching out to the Judicial Council or something along those lines would be a better way to, you know, I think there are other ways perhaps, you know, to get this ball rolling. If it is something the assembly is interested in, you know, then litigation. That's my thoughts. I think the judicial, you know.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I don't know a whole lot about this. And so I would entertain that maybe we should invite Mr. Adams and maybe if Mr. Fine Walsh, if they could, you know, if we could put a resolution as an action item on for the next agenda. But before I could vote one way or another on it, I need to be educated a little bit more than I am right now. So I'd like to have a little bit of an education process before I'd feel comfortable voting one way or another. But I wouldn't be opposed to having it fleshed out a little bit more and inviting Mr. Adams to present what he wrote in the letter, and we could ask him some questions, and if Mr. Fine Walsh, if he's amenable to it, if he could elaborate a little bit more on his approach. I kind of like his approach better, but I'd like to hear some more information, I guess. Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have to agree with Member Kensinger. It would be nice to have somebody lay out, and I'm not sure who the person is to lay out why it got transferred and the history behind it and the pros and cons from having somebody here. I think, you know, I think we all know that if you want to have a resolution, just throw it in to the city clerk before the meeting, and we can talk about it. But I think I'd need to have a little bit more background on how it ended up in Ketchikan and what disadvantages it's having for Petersburg and Wrangell. So I would need more information before I voted one way or the other on it.
Member Fine Walsh.
I'll just chime in briefly. You know, as much as I appreciate Mr. Adams bringing this before the assembly, you know, I mean, he's a construction expert, not a legal expert. So, you know, I think if the assembly is interested in digging into the legal aspects of this, it'd probably be worth, like Member Mushu says, putting a resolution together and directing the manager to, you know, go through our borough attorney and get us some feedback on that. But my feeling looking at these pleadings is that this is not the correct way to go. Suing the state of Alaska is I mean, that's a pretty major step, you know, and I think this lawsuit was already put before the Supreme Court and was kind of failed there, and has now been refiled in the Superior Court. And it looks like, you know, before too long, we'll get some feedback from the court there, and that will, you know, enlighten us a little bit. But still, my sense is the better approach, you know, and not through litigation, but through, you know, legislation. Ultimately, this may be something that we need to discuss with our political representatives. So yeah, that's my thoughts. If you want to get Joshua back in to talk about it, I think that's great, but I don't think I as much as, like I said, I appreciate him, you know, bringing his concerns, but I think he wants us to kind of do the next steps. I don't believe he has the expertise to really enlighten us much. Thank you.
Member Lynn, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I think I agree with Member Walsh here. But I still don't know what an approach should be. And before we even get to a resolution stage, I'm with Member Kensinger. I think I need more information to understand the whole process, you know, from how we got it here and how we lost it and what's the best approach to take from there. And I'm certainly not the person to answer those questions.
Yeah, I agree. We need more information. And after reading this correspondence from Mr. Adams, I was kind of concerned. One thing that was said in it, that Fred Treem has been given a hearings as of February 3rd at 8:30 a.m. and will speak on our behalf. I'm just wondering who our is, and we've never taken any action to have Mr. Treem represent us. So, but I would like to get, I don't know if you call it to the bottom of this, but I'd like to be brought up to speed on it. I mean, why did the court decide we don't need a judge here holding trial anymore. Maybe that's something the clerk can just look into for us. I mean, or somebody, I mean, why did they take it away? I don't understand. But anyway, I agree, it'd be worth looking into, so. Member Kensinger.
So I guess my question that I'd like to see answered is, my understanding is there hasn't been a judge that's actually physically lived in Wrangell or Petersburg or Cake for a long time. And I don't know if that's really the issue. It sounds like to me, maybe the issue is whether the judge actually comes here to town to conduct trials. And I guess that's the question I'd like to have answered before I could, go any further with this.
You're the mayor, if I've been here a little over 11 years. The state moves judges around, they move prosecutors around on a fairly regular basis. Suing them to get them to change that is probably not a great approach. We had some relief at one time when we were talking about prosecutors by talking to the Department of Law in the governor's office by saying, hey, we're not getting adequate service from a prosecution standpoint. Today, I think, Jim, where's our prosecuting district attorney based out of? Is it-
The last I heard was Sitka, but they keep changing between Sitka and Juneau.
Yeah.
Might be back in Juneau now,
Okay.
as of like 2 months ago or something. They keep going back and forth, it seems like.
And they kind of do, I mean, the judges are based in one location, but they kind of move them around as well, which is kind of I'm going to assume is an administrative process in the Department of Law. And yeah, again, I agree with, some of them to find, well, suing the state is not only expensive, but probably won't get us very far. We think we got so far last time when we were talking about prosecuting attorneys. We got the, assistant DA for the assistant attorney general for the state to come to Petersburg and talk to folks. And, that's about as best we've been able to ever accomplish on stuff like this. I think it'd be even harder with judges. There's not as many of them. And, Jim, does Judge Carey come here very often, or, how's that been handled other than just online?
He's retired, but
Okay, all right.
the judges from Ketchikan, the judge that we have assigned here, comes up here, and so that's why I actually asked about this last time after the meeting, because I had heard scuttle about it, but it wasn't affecting us, so I didn't really know the ins and outs, and so I haven't really dug into it because it hasn't affected us.
So with that information, Chief Kerr, do we still have a traveling judge come from Ketchikan like Judge Carey did in the recent past and hold, hearings?
Yeah, we just had one here recently. that had
Oh,
a
so it's
jury
not
trial.
like we've lost what we had.
We haven't lost the service. I guess it's something to do with the seat or something. The way it was explained to me was the actual seat we lost or something to that effect.
Member Fine Walsh.
Speak to that briefly. I believe that there was at one time a district court judge based in Petersburg and Wrangell, and I think in Petersburg, and that judge retired and the seat was moved. Basically, the judge that replaced him took up residence in Ketchikan, and ever since then, there have been, I think, 3 judges in Ketchikan instead of 2. And I believe that's the incident in the early 80s that's referred to in Mr. Trium's lawsuit. So it's been a long time.
Yeah, I remember when I was young, we had a local, judge, state judge was here, but that was, I think it was probably still in high school. So I'm not gonna say how long ago that was, but anyway, it's a good item to discuss, and thank you for bringing it up, Member Marsh, and we'll see what we find out. But like I said earlier, I just wanted to make it clear from my perspective that us does not mean the Petersburg Borough being represented by Fred Treen, and I think I'm correct on that statement. So, any other input on this discussion item? Member Mucci.
So I just want to be clear, are we asking the city clerk to kind of look into some history for us, or are we looking to put this on the next agenda for direction?
Well, an assembly member can ask her if they want to put it on there, but I don't know what kind of action we would take except for get information so we understand what's going on. It doesn't sound like, it's not very clear to me, which could be easily confused, but
I could probably gather some information and at least send out an email to everyone as to what we learned.
Yeah, don't want to put a lot of effort into it, but yeah. So is there any other assembly member comments? Seeing none, is there any recognitions by staff or Harbor Master Wolin?
Well, I just,
Oh, push it down in, maybe the mic itself.
I'd like to thank all of the, I would like to thank all the borough employees for, their attentive through this last winter weather that we've had, as well as, the Parks and Rec, staff for hosting a wonderful winter wonderland for the kids. It was magnificent. And like I told the rest of my department heads that, I don't remember the all out, pull out the stops, for kids like we do today when I was a kid. So I appreciate that. And the s'mores with cops was just unbelievable. So I hope that is an annually event. So kudos to the borough staff for all they do for our community.
All right, thank you for that recognition. Any other recognitions by assembly members or staff? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Like usual, no one, none. Okay.